Hi, and welcome to the Bookweaver's Quills podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the things that are left unsaid, where the reader is invited to be part and participate in the actual storyline, where they can read and fill in for themselves the essence of what is being indicated and implied. So, ladies, intrigue of how we try to do that as writers. I read in preparation for today, I was reading how Hemingway and Lois Lowry, who's a young adult writer, how they're expert at doing this type of thing, of allowing their readers to, they just plant certain ideas, certain things, and how their readers absolutely are able to then participate in the story. And Hemingway, they said, is one of the biggest ones that uses that in his, or used that in his writings. So I found that interesting.
I don't know if I deliberately will do, I guess it is deliberate, but I know that if I'm writing and there are certain things like I want to give away to the reader, like, hey, take this journey with me, which is a little different. Like sometimes I'll be like, this is the bad guy, and let's go from here kind of deal, which is sort of like the opposite tactic. But then almost like the character doesn't know all of this. So you're almost experiencing it with the character, that
Right.
not knowing and having to come to those conclusions. And I like that. So I think I do it not overtly, sometimes I'm just doing it to, bring the reader along on this journey, but not really knowing that I'm specifically doing that.
Jackie, what about you?
I think I probably have a good amount of difficulty not over explaining things in the writing. Like I think that comes more during my editing phase when I'm rereading and like, wow, I really didn't need to spell that out. And then I go ahead and take out what seems like maybe a little bit too forced or something that just, especially a lot of times most of my writing is first person, so it actually lends itself to natural moments of silence or misunderstanding from the protagonist's perspective. So I really probably, that's something that I'm, after doing this podcast, I think I'm going to pay more attention to that aspect of my writing.
I think I'm particularly focused on it right now, only because the book that I'm working on, I really believed was an allegory. And the more research I do, I'm finding out that allegories are more telling the reader something versus a parable, which is inviting a transformation. And I realize now that my story, The Old Man's Beard, is really more about transformation. And I have to say, truthfully, I kind of shy away from the word parable. I mean, allegory, I thought sounded so, great. Parable? So I got to sit with that. So it's just like, So, so I've been doing a lot of research in that area. And again, inviting the reader to surmise what is in between the lines. And let them come up with what they're thinking and saying in their identification to the characters and things like that. So, yeah, it's something that I'm really trying to focus on. And I've read a lot of Lois Lowry, and especially when I was teaching school, I had, 5th and 6th grade, and that's kind of like her age group. And so it's just an interesting research path that I'm on right now with all of that.
Did you want to share your piece first, since
I can if you
want. Talking about your
yeah, I guess I could. It's so funny. My natural inclination is always to go last, and the reason is my last name, my unmarried name was Weiss,
Mm.
So I went to Catholic school, and in Catholic school, when I was going to school, they put you alphabetically. So I was always last. So it's my natural inclination to just wait till last. So when somebody says first, it's just like,
Really?
really? I'm at the head of the class. Well, this is an excerpt from The Old Man's Beard. And in this story, it's about an old man and his wife, both of whom are living off the grid, so to say, and just the different things that are happening to them in their lives. Okay, so this excerpt is from the viewpoint of the old woman. The old woman often watched him from the doorway when he returned from the pine forest. His boots were always covered with pine needles, which irritated her. Take off your boots, she said harshly. I've just swept the floor, and I don't need dirt from that forest following you into the house. When her husband spoke of the pine forest, it was as though it offered something more than shade and timber. She felt a surge of impatience and did nothing to hide it from him. And yet he carried a peace she could neither measure nor dismiss. She had long ago stopped expecting joy from ordinary things. Trees were trees, wind was weather. Peace, if it existed at all, was something people claimed when their work was done, and their work was never done. Many times he would return from the forest with that unexplained calm resting in his shoulders, and she would look at him as though he were speaking a language she had never learned. You listen too hard, she criticized. The world is not whispering secrets. Our lives are about preparation and survival. She needed him to face the reality of their lives. His musings were unproductive and took time away from the necessary chores she demanded. Her focus was to steady him, to keep him anchored to what could be counted, carried, and cooked before dark. And yet, sometimes at night, listening to his breathing, uncovered by his long beard, she felt settled beside him. And in those unguarded moments, she wondered whether her certainty had become a kind of imposed isolation. Was peace something found or something allowed at all, after all? What she knew for sure was that it felt easier to dismiss the forest than to admit she had once stood beneath those same trees and felt nothing. If there was music there, she did not hear it, and she had long since stopped asking why.
Mm.
Wow.
So the different experience that each of them have by the pine forest that's right across from their cabin is extreme. You know, she's very practical. She wants things done. You know, she sees herself as a survivalist, and that in the beginning part of the story, you know, it's the old man's beard, the length of his beard, that really keeps them. I mean, she puts out a little alms basket so that when people from the village come past, you know, they put some money in just to stand there and touch the beard and talk to him and everything like that. And she sees that as, you know, just the way for them to survive, whereas he sees it so totally different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So there you go.
So I was thinking just of, you know, the whole idea of being in survival mode and then being more aligned with peace and joy, and that feeling of when you're in survival mode, you are thinking completely different than somebody who is you know, more connected or allowing joy in, or that peace. And just like from my perspective, the whole idea of like inferring some of the things that are there, you know, her walking into that peace and feeling nothing is so,
Mhm.
you know, aligned with that idea of like being in survival. So
Mhm.
it's just like something that I like, you can't see the beauty or the peace because your mind is so hyper vigilant and aware of like all of the things that you need to be doing. And,
Yeah.
I'm not speaking from experience. I'm just, no, I'm kidding.
Well, I think our minds get so cluttered with things that we have to do by a certain time for a certain reason, all of that. And I feel like that's what she's caught in. She's caught in all that. Whereas he sees the pine forest. And as the story is told, it has a lot of meaning to him because he and his brothers and his father used to go in and chop wood and bring things like that. So it has a whole different meaning to him for his life versus hers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, to be honest, when I was listening, I kept thinking about how her perspective seemed like an old woman, whereas his perspective seemed like that of a child, which plays in nicely if his memories, because what keeps us young, to be honest, it's our interaction with other people, it's our memories, it's the link that we have to our childhood. So the old man, if he went into the forest with his family when he was young, that would make perfect sense.
Yeah. And he sees the pine forest as being an extension of their lives. Like the pine forest gives them what they need that you can't see. I heard a beautiful thing the other day, and it was Carolyn Mace. And she was saying that everything that's important to our survival, everything that's important to us, is something you cannot see. I thought that was like so cool.
Yeah.
She said, everything that is important for us, you cannot see. So, and he feels what's there in the pine forest. He does hear the music. And for him, it's the way the wind comes through the trees and everything. But she does not. Yeah. But I'm hoping that I plant the fact that there is a chance for her transformation. So that's what I'm hoping in this particular excerpt is in between the lines. That there hopefully that there is a chance for her transformation. But is she allowing it or is she not? Is that peace something that you just find, or is it something that you allow?
Right.
That's a big question.
I was wondering actually when you were reading it as well, if that wasn't a call out to the reader to evaluate similar situations in their life, because as you were reading it, I was bombarded with like so many thoughts of all the different things that I'm going through right now, and how the way we react and the way we observe what's around us really does influence the way that we perceive the world around us.
Yeah. And are we just surviving it, or are we hearing, the world whisper to us different things that can help us if we're going through it?
Right.
Yeah.
And just as sorry, I have one more comment about the old man.
We're not finished.
Yeah, we're not done. And his perspective, because there are moments when I will walk and I'm just walking and there's like nothing, I don't have the dog, I don't have anybody. And I'll like look at the trees and I'll breathe in the air and I'm just like overcome with this feeling of complete and utter like joy for no reason and this peace for no reason. So I think a lot of people probably can see both sides and have, even though these are two different people, it's really like each one of us has been able to experience both sides. Like we've been where she is and we also have been where he is. And so I think that brings an added layer to it.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. All right. Who wants to read next?
Either way.
Me?
Do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
I'll go. That's fine. Okay, so mine is from book 1 of The Heirs of Algoria. So it's The Heir of Light and Shadows. And it's in a moment where one of my characters, or my main male character, has finally reached the inn where there is a these fae that are coming after them, and there are also a mafia, so it's a mafia and fae. And he's trying to just get everything settled because the FBI is involved. There's a lot of moving parts here. And there's this moment where he's going back to his room, and the innkeeper is acting a little strange. So I'm reading this off of my computer. So if I'm staring into the camera, you know why. Okay. With that, Brody left and headed to the main entrance of the inn. As he did, he couldn't help but notice the innkeeper hobbling out of the woods, seemingly in a dour mood. "Everything okay, Mr. Ermington?" Brody asked. Ermington looked up at Brody and said, "Everything's fine. It's just, I'm getting old, and preparations take time, you know?" "Yeah," Brody responded, unsure what the old man meant. "Did you hurt yourself in the woods?" "Some sacrifices must be made." "Sure," Brody said. "Sure, but do you need help, sir?" "No," Ermington smiled. "Enjoy yourself at the dance tonight. The rain is coming." "I will," Brody nodded. He couldn't help but notice the innkeeper's odd behavior. "Hey, do you think I could get that library key in the morning?" "The key? Oh, yes, the key. Come to the desk in the morning and I'll have it for you." "Thanks," Brody replied. Ermington walked away and Brody hung back for a second. He contemplated telling Nunez about Ermington's odd behavior. The man had seemed fine earlier that day, but now... Then again, it was possible, given Ermington's age, that he was simply experiencing some confusion. He would leave it alone for now and check up on the old man in the morning. So that's it.
I love this book. I just need to insert that right there.
So I think what I was trying to do with that, and I'm okay with giving spoilers away. A lot of people have read, book one, so it's okay. He doesn't realize like who Ermington is. I mean, they had just had a meeting with this guy, and he was like, "Hey, if you guys need anything, let me know." Like, the FBI had filled him in about what was going on, not anything about the supernatural part, but the part about, this is an FBI investigation now, and, so we're going to be monitoring things carefully, and he's just overly helpful. And then all of a sudden, Brody sees him hobbling out of the woods, like muttering under his breath, basically saying these weird things like sacrifices must be made. And, he has questions, right? Like, but he doesn't overthink it because there's too much going on. So, I wanted the reader to pause there and say, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Right. I thought that was very good right at that section, because you do start to ask that question. And I find it invitational, because you kind of stand beside Birdie and want to ask additional questions with him. But it is in between the lines that you're paying attention to the answers, or the non-answers, I should say, that the innkeeper is giving. And that's what I think is so powerful. It's the things that he's not saying that create such a strong intrigue right there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I remember reading that section the first time I read that. I think I read that book 2 times plus, because I remember reading.
You've read it a lot. I keep saying, I'm like, oh, you need to reread this for me.
But I remember that was one of my favorite parts when I was reading, because I knew it was just going to be so good when I found out what it was going to be. I knew I had no idea. You didn't give enough clues that I could guess it. I remember trying to guess it. I tried to guess everything, but I was way off. But I was so intrigued to find out what really was happening, and really kept the attention. So
and Jackie, as a reader, and you just said you try to guess things, So as a reader, what do you think other readers feel like when they're trying to guess and reading between the lines? And Stephanie, as an author, pulled something totally different.
As a reader, I love it when I think it's going to go one way and then it's completely another way and it's completely founded on top of it. And you're like, oh, right. Okay. That makes complete sense. Like my mind was like out there
Right.
doing weird things. And this makes it's like so simple. And you're just like, how did I not see that? But it's just so well done.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. She crafted it so well that
Yep.
it is a surprise.
All slides into place and you're like, how did I not see that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you think then, Steph, because you said at the beginning of this that you don't intentionally set that up. So how would you answer what?
So I think I try to take the journey as a reader while I'm writing, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Mm-hmm.
So like I am also experiencing it. I try to imagine what could be, and then what my immediate thoughts will go to one idea. This just happened to me the other day with book 3. I had one idea in place for something. And then I said, well, what if? I asked that question, like, what if? And there might be, 3 or 4 ideas that are the what ifs. So I think I tried to write it as a reader. I also read a lot of books, so I enjoy that as well. And then also pose the question of what if, because that allows me to kind of steer away from the predictable. But I know like that word isn't necessarily a good word to use because sometimes predictable is like okay. But I try to steer away from that in certain situations so that I can trick people like Jackie. Actually,
They're
just
so
Jackie.
predictable.
I just want to trick Jackie. When I write, I just think about how am I going to get her.
And you never answer my emails when I'm like, does this happen? Does this happen?
I go
Does
like this. I go, maybe. Because
right.
it happened to me the other day. I was in the middle of writing book 3 and I had this idea. I was like really set on it. And she emailed me and she's like, is this like, am I right with this? Considered what she said. And then I went back and I was like, wait a minute, what if this happened? And it's totally different. It's so different. And I just couldn't have planned it, So
It's funny, when I originally started writing this book years ago, it was really only from the old man's perspective, the whole thing. We saw his wife doing things, but we really never got into her brain. And as I've been reworking it recently, I have started to let her in because she has a certain type of pain that I really wanted to give respect and honor to versus hiding it as I did in the first one, in the first number of versions. But
can I just make a comment on that? Because as you have been talking about this book, I immediately thought, like, he's great. I love him. But, like, what is her story? That is, so I've been thinking about that since you've been talking about this book. So,
yeah, like I said, the original is just boom, 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 just all him, But I did really, like I said, a lot changed for me when I read the difference between allegory and parable. And like I said, I'm still uncomfortable with the word parable because to me it seems biblical. And I'm not writing anything biblical. But the more I delved into it, the more it made sense to me. So it's a very interesting rewrite and letting her come to the forefront a little bit more. So and what she is fighting is more herself than him, but he's that reflective conduit that is reflecting back to her where she needs to heal. So, which is another thing, Carolyn Mace. She has a book about that. It's called How People Can Heal and Why They Don't. And in that book, she talks about relationships. And she talks to us about in significant relationships, all relationships really, the other person can mirror to us places where we can grow. So when there's a conflict and things like that, if we begin to look at it in that viewpoint and go from that perspective versus they're hurting me, they're da 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 da. So that's one of the things that I was trying to get in this new rewrite.
I like that. I'd like to read that book too.
Yeah. Oh, it's an excellent book. She's an excellent writer. But she's all nonfiction, but
right.
Yeah. Okay, Jackie.
All
I
right.
think you're up.
Okay, so this excerpt is from House of Unwound Thread, and it's a passage when the protagonist, the main character, who is a young woman who has no memory, is trying yet again to figure out what's going on and see why she still can't remember anything. So she goes through a series of tests, and this is right after the testing. And I also will be reading off of my computer, so crazy eyes, be ready. Okay. Negatives, I asked. Claudel ran a pensive finger up and down the length of the tube. Inside this canister are your test results. They're called negatives because of the way the images show up. If we were to look at them right now, everything would appear exactly the opposite of how it really is. I pushed a wayward tress behind my ear. How could a picture possibly show something other than what is? Claudel shrugged, crossing the room to where a pair of identical doors stood side by side. I thought she might disappear into one of them without so much as a word, but instead, a quick flash of blue caught my attention as she spun around, eyes bright as flames. Sometimes things must be rendered as they are not in order to be seen as they are. My lip wedged to a pout. That doesn't make sense. The screech of metal hinges grated through the air, interrupting my protests as the door to the left swung open. If you don't believe me, why don't you come in and see for yourself, she said, slipping inside. The room was small and insipidly plain, without the slightest decoration or even a window to smarten the view. On the far wall, rows of white shelves hung to either side of an old porcelain sink, their ledges packed tight with boxes and bins. Across from them, a long white table had been divided into 3 sections, the first displaying a tidy assortment of cutting shears and small glinting knives, the second, a scattering of glass bottles with colorful stoppers, and the door scraped shut, plunging everything into darkness. Or rather, nearly. On the table, a small ring of candles flickered from inside crimson jars, staining everything an eerie shade of red. The scene set my teeth on edge. What happened to the light? I gritted out. Claudel's form was silhouetted in red haze as she drifted across the room to the table's 3rd section, where a few rectangular basins had already been laid out. Despite what many believe, light cannot always reveal that which is hidden. She let her voice trail off. Silence set in, thick with unspoken truth. Sometimes, things that were hidden could only be revealed in darkness.
I love it. There's so many places that I want to say, oh. Yeah, really, very, very, very well done.
Thanks.
Very well done. And I like that you start out with negatives because it has 2 connotations. You know, when, excuse me, when the reader's reading it, you know, you can think it's words that are negative, or you can think of the photo type negatives. And so that's really well done. Yeah,
Thank you.
very well done. And I like the way you bring it first full circle.
Can you read your last line again?
Yes. Uh, she let her voice trail off. Silence set in, thick with unspoken truth. Sometimes things that were hidden could only be revealed in darkness.
I think that line right there like hits home in so many levels for so many different things.
Right.
Because a lot of people think, and this is just like something hearing it again and then again, is like a lot of people think, that everything has to be brought to light, right? Like the light has to be on for it to be revealed. And they'll look at darkness as something that is really bad. Like we got to get out of this,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes darkness is the way that truth is revealed and sheds that light then on things. And I think that that's just like one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. So,
Yes, this book deals a lot with themes of good and bad, and what really is good and bad, and what really is darkness and light. And it's a lot about the opposites. So I do a lot of play on words, even like Anna Marie said about the negatives. A lot of it comes into the dichotomy of different things, and the opposite, and the way that the opposites interplay in strange ways.
I think it's very powerful also. Oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry for
no, go ahead.
talking over you. I thought it was very powerful in this excerpt that you used color. And for me, that pays attention to chakras and things like that, and the associated color. If I'm not mistaken, in the beginning, when the one young lady turned around, she was in blue, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And blue, of course, is the throat chakra. So I found that to be very powerful in that section. But then when you got inside to the room and everything, it was red. And that's the root chakra. And I found, so I was listening to it really based on that perception of the colors of the chakras. So I was really paying attention to it like that. And yeah, I thought that was very powerful. So again, I don't know that you necessarily had that in mind when you were writing, but it, for those of us that do. Yeah. Go ahead.
I did think about the thoughts of heat and cold. So the gaze that the woman gave her was her eyes that flashed blue because she has blue eyes, but the blue was, I believe I said bright as flames. So usually you don't think of the flame as blue. So it's already a juxtaposition between those elements. And then when you go in and there is the actual flame, that's the red. And there's the opposite of the cold and the hot.
Did you have anything that you wanted your reader to take away from this passage?
Well, I was kind of hoping. Now I get pretty deep, and I think like a lot of my stuff just like does not translate. It gets lost in translation, but I remember I probably reworked this passage quite a few times, but there was a whole big thing about left versus right as well. And the double, that's why there are the double doors. It wouldn't have been the same because the double door is the choice. There's a choice. I mean, they're both leading to the same thing, but why go through the left-hand door rather than the right, or the right rather than the left? And what does that symbolize as well? So a lot of my stuff is very symbolic because I think in symbols, and I think that it's lost on the reader, but I like to plant those things in because if ever somebody does love this book and they go back and read it again, they're going to find little pepite everywhere. They're just little things are planted all throughout. So that once you know actually what happens and this young woman's journey and why she is where she is and how this all happened, then it'll take on an entirely different symbolism.
Yeah.
Shall it get published?
It will.
Definitely should be. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I also, it's funny that you mentioned that with the nuggets of information. I try to do that too. And I think but not like you. Like yours is so well crafted. It's this, you use symbols in ways that they just amaze me. They truly do. Like your writing is just phenomenal. Um, Mine is more like someone will say something, and then if someone goes back and reads that, like I'll give people just a little hint. There are things in book 3 that if you go back and read book 1, you're going to be like, "Oh my goodness." Because it was just like one little line, but it has such an impact in the third book, or the second book. There were a couple things in the second book, but the second book had like a trajectory that it needed to take. But so when you said that, it made me think, because like that's part of the fun of writing too, it's like just those little pieces.
Like crafting a puzzle,
Yeah.
and you let
Hmm.
people pick and choose the pieces that are most obvious to them. Like that's why books are different for different people when they're reading them, and why people get different things out of the same book, because you bring your whole life experience and you bring your perception. So you see, Anna Marie read one thing, which was actually not intentional. I was not thinking chakras. I was thinking more of the cold. But see, it's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of in the same direction. Um, and Stephanie might have brought the hot and cold aspect into it, or something else. So
Yeah. Madeline L'Engle talked about that in a lot of her instructional books that she wrote. And of course, she wrote A Wrinkle in Time. And that was a very controversial book. When she
yes.
wrote it, she got a lot of slack. And last week, when we did our other podcast, about validation, she got a lot of feedback that was very negative in that particular book. But she wanted to honor her readers, and she wanted them to be able to look at a subject that had never really been touched upon. It was always forbidden, really. And it wasn't witchcraft, and it wasn't, what shall I say? It was one of the first books that gave honor to energy, and
Yeah.
that energy could shift things in both a positive and negative way. And so she has a lot in her work in that particular book of just posing things and leaving it left unsaid, so that, and especially different people have said it's because she respected the readers that she knew would, stay with her in this particular type of book. Now, she was a very, very aware of spirituality, which she peppers throughout that particular book, but in a much different way. It was spirituality. It was the first time that I was aware of the fact that there's science and spirituality. I think was the first time that when I read her book, that I could see that intermingling. And I think she was one of the first people to be brave enough to do that. So
It's interesting, and I know this is kind of like off topic, but it's interesting to think about, like, I know who I am and what I love and how I view the world. And there are books that when we're younger, maybe this is a discussion we can have at like another time, that have affected me in such a way to help, I guess, ground that part of myself. Like A Wrinkle in Time was one of my favorite books, and I have a bunch of books that are, for you to say that and to know who I am and what, I believe. And it just kind of brings that full circle for me, because I'm like, oh, that would be why I identified so much with that book and felt so close to it,
Right. Yeah, she's an excellent writer. And I'm trying to think, can you both remember who wrote The Giver? Was that Lois Lowry?
It is Lois. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was having a blank right there. But
I want to
The
double
Giver,
check, but I'm like
I'm
99.9%
almost
sure.
positive it is she also. But The Giver is very much like that. It really offers it. She gives respect to the age group that she was writing for, that they would have the ability to understand what the maturity that a lot of people didn't give that age group. They didn't give them the respect that they could be mature enough to understand what she was writing.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a very, very well crafted. I did not like the movie. I didn't think the movie
Yeah.
did justice to what was written.
I remember that too. I think that the book, I mean, I often think the book is better, like in most cases. But I remember specifically thinking that The Giver just didn't do.
Mhm.
No
Right.
offense to any of those people. It's like-
Well, yeah.
It's
Well,
very
we're
difficult to portray something as subtle as the words on the page
Mhm.
through acting, I think, too.
Mhm.
Speaking of that, though, there was something I wanted to bring up about my husband and I just watched The Housemaid the other day,
Mhm.
and I have to go and read the book because I'm a book person, so usually like to read the book before I watch a movie.
All right.
I just didn't get around to it because I saw it and I had seen previews for it. But then it was a very good movie. I ended up Googling the author, Frida McFadden, her name is. And then I was reading an article about her and I felt so connected to her because she validated something for me that I felt was not a weakness, but almost like how people might view me about writing. But she said that when she writes multiple books a year, many, many, many novels. Because when she writes in totality. Like she doesn't stop. She immerses herself in the characters and she just moves forward with them. I'm just paraphrasing basically what the
Mhm.
article said. And I thought, wow, like that's what I do. Like I'm almost done with book 3 and maybe it's taken me a few months to write it because I've just been so immersed in this book. And I know I'll also complete book 4 this year. Like I can do that. I can churn out books because I put almost every bit of energy I have into it and it's just like a different writing process than other people. Like some people take a longer time because the way that they do things is just different and it doesn't make it like bad or good, but I've never heard of somebody like writing the way that I write. And that was the first
Mhm.
time that I saw that somebody does that and I just felt so connected to it and I was like, this is so cool. So I'll have
Mhm.
to like find the article and share it with you guys, but
Mhm. Well, Elizabeth Gilbert does a lot of her research for multiple books as she's writing one book.
Okay.
You know, she
How
talks
about you,
about.
Anne Marie? How do
Pardon me, hon?
you how about you? How do you write your books?
Oh, gracious glory. I'm very similar in the fact that I can be working on one and I have like 5 others in my head. And so I
Mhm.
make notes and put them in a little book, and I have a number of stories books that I've written and just never moved forward with them at the time that I was writing them. So I'm doing a lot now of going back to those manuscripts,
Mm.
and I find it to be. At first, I was disappointed in myself that I hadn't followed through. So there was a lot of self chiding initially.
Mm.
But now, after sitting thinking about it, realize that I'm bringing a whole different viewpoint because I'm at a much different space and place in my own life and have had certain experiences that in my wildest dreams I would never have thought I would have. So I
Mm.
can see that it was perfect timing
Mhm.
and, a rhyme and a reason as to why it's happened the way it's happened. So, yeah. Yeah, but I was going to go back to Elizabeth. She said she takes even shoe boxes, and she just does a lot of her research. And if she finds something for her research on a particular book that she has not written as of yet, she'll just put, a little 3x5 because she uses 3x5 cards, or she did at the time she was talking about this. And she said she'd just put it in there. And so she'd have multiple things. So she'd have multiple stories or books going, with at least the research. And it was fascinating. I don't know that I'll do it quite the justice that she did, but she said that whatever work that she did at the particular time that she was doing it, she would find that she'd be putting down tons of information. I think as she was talking about when she had written the book, The Signature of All Things, which is a very complex book, a lot of information. And but she said when she would be doing her research, she'd do more than she really needed to do, and then she'd put in this little box for the future when she would sit and write the book. And she said it was always so nice that when she was there writing the book, that part of her, which was the future having come from the person that had done the research, that person gifted the future person. And so she had more research than she needed, but she thanked this person for doing all of that because she was able to sift through it in a different way had she not had it. Like I said, I'm not doing poetic justice to the way that she explains it. But if we ever find it, Steph, the interview, I'll send it and we can put it on with this podcast.
Okay.
And she does a beautiful job in explaining, your present self as you're preparing for a book and what you can do for your future self as you're writing it. So,
Interesting.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for today, guys, unless you had something else.
I did. I
Oh,
wanted
okay.
to say that I have sent to you, Steph, something that I was hoping that we could put along with this particular podcast. I sat and thought a lot about what I was trying to say in this excerpt, or what I had refined in this excerpt, and tried to put it into a reflective type quote. And I was hoping that we could offer it to anyone that's listening to this particular podcast, that they could download it if they so chose. So I just want to say that. And you're the brains behind most of this social media type stuff. So all I want to say is that that reflective quote is there if anyone wants to download it.
Okay. Sounds good.